friends! So for day 20 of BookMas, we are going to chat through the worst books I have read this year. I always preface this video by saying this is just my opinions, and just because a book I think is the worst, it's a book that just didn't work for me. I have finished all of these books. This list does not include any DNFs, but I really struggled to finish them. So sometimes it's characters, sometimes it's plot, sometimes it's choices, sometimes it's pacing, sometimes it's writing style. We're going to get into all that. I always say this is just my opinion. As I always say, this is my channel. This is my opinion. If you have adored these books, I am so happy that you love them. They just did not work for me for the reasons I'm going to explain. And let's go spill some tea, friends. Is a book that I read really early in the year. I think I read it in January, and that's Crown of Bones. Here is a thing I struggled with this book. I did finish this book. I started reading it and the pacing really felt awkward. I didn't really feel connected to the characters. Finished listening to the audiobook, and at the end I knew I wasn't going to continue with this series. It was very hard to have buy-in, and I felt the world building was a little bit unclear, and the writing style was one I could just not get behind, and the writing style made the characters really unappealing. So it was okay, but I just struggled to like the writing style and feel connected to the characters. It was a unique fantasy book from what I remember. There was a war on the horizon. It was dual point of view, I think. Maybe it was a couple more point of views. But I just didn't feel connected to anyone, and that is why it made this list and why it's on this list, even though I read it so early in the year. But it's the first book that I was like, not going to work for me, and that's why it's on this list. Book that did not wow me this year was Speak Easy, Speak Love, which was like a historical fiction read that just did not wow me. Sounded like I would really like it. It was set in the 1920s, was actually my favorite time period, was set in New York City, and you followed like 6 point of view characters as they spent this summer together. I did not like any of the characters. There was a lot of point of views. I didn't feel invested in any of them. The romances were like not compelling. It was really confusing to learn whose head you were in because all the point of views seemed super similar. I really should have DNF'd this book. Like I really should have, because I really did not like any part of it. As the year went on, I got more comfortable DNFing books, but still at this point, I was still very much like, I have to trudge through. I did change my thoughts. I still don't love DNFing, and most of the time I will kind of trudge through, but I have DNF'd a little bit more as the year has gone on. But this book, all the elements together just did not wow me, and the writing style, if you also include the unlikable characters, really made this book a hard read for me. And I haven't really heard anyone talk about it, so it came out a couple of years ago, but it just did not wow me, and that's why it's on this list. I am so sad about this one because I really struggled with like the whole series, but the book in this series that I like the least and why it's on this list is Fire by Kristen Cashore. I have had not the best luck when I read older YA series. They just don't always work for me. And I will admit I liked Graceling, but Fire, Bitter Blue, it just did not work for me. I really just did not get why I was supposed to care about these characters. It was really different from book 2, from book 1 I mean, but I didn't feel connected to the characters, and the world building was awkward for me. The book was paced really, really oddly, and I just didn't feel anything for the characters, and I didn't want to continue reading at the end of the day. It made me really hard to trudge through this series. So I think I gave it 3 on Goodreads. I'd probably give it 2 stars. I just really struggled with the pacing and the world building and the characters, and I ultimately just did not like much by this author. Honestly, I will consider reading something by her in the future. I read Jane Unlimited and enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, but this series, just for some reason, none of the books worked for me, but Fire was the one that I disliked the most. Sorry if you like the Graceling series, it just didn't work for me. The next book I am going to chat about is a contemporary book that just did not wow me. And again, it was a book that I had really high expectations for. I'm a theater kid, so if you give me like a retelling of a classic Shakespeare tale, I'm probably gonna like it. This book, however, was not for me, and that is Smash It by Francina Simone. This book, I just did not like the character. She was really hard to like, and the choices she made. There was cheating in this book, which I don't like. The relationship I didn't really feel much for. It was a hard book to like, and I think that that might have been the point of it. But there was also like a list element, and I thought I would like that. But this book altogether, especially the main character being really unlikable, I do struggle with books with really unlikable characters, so unfortunately this one did not work for me. And I normally love Shakespeare retellings. Like, I think they're so great. It gets like kids to talk about it. Like, we talk about them with my kids a lot in my theater class because we talk about retellings a lot. This book, however, I just hated the main character. Did not like her. I didn't have any buy-in in the romance, and her choices were really questionable throughout this whole read, and that is why it has made this list. I don't know if I'm going to read anything by Francine Simone in the future, but this book was definitely not for me. It's a book that just makes me so sad because I have loved most of the Twisted Tales. There was one or two that I didn't adore, but I was so excited for Unbirthday by Liz Brashwell, and it just was not what I was hoping for. Concepts for Twisted Tales, because it takes a question, it kind of takes your classic movie, ask a question, and sort of changes it. So this one was what happens if Alice is very, very late. And it's sort of having her go back to Wonderland many years later, trying to save the day. This book was just so boring. And I know you're saying, but it's Wonderland is amazing. I agree with you. The way the story was constructed just was boring. It was really long. It was not paced well. I love Alice as a character. I did not love her in the story, and I just think that was really a slow pace. It wasn't captivating. It wasn't interesting, unfortunately, but I still like the series. I will probably try to read the other ones this year and try to read a few more of them. I actually just got one for Christmas, but this book, for someone who really likes Alice in Wonderland, that mythology and that like concept and stuff, I was really disappointed in this one quite a bit, and it just was not my favorite, and that's why I made this list. A lot of books on this list have very unlikable characters, and that is no different in this book, and that is The Chorus Rises by Bethany C. Morrow. To A Song Below Water, set in the same exact world. This is following the social media influencer siren that you meet in the first book or hear about in the first book. I could not stand the main character in this book, to the point that I was rooting for all the side characters and everyone else. She just was so annoying. I could not get behind her in the slightest. She just really rubbed me the wrong way. And any single time she made a choice, anyone else that was like against her, I was on their side, and I just could not get behind her. I like the ending a little bit more because it was a little bit more action and adventure-y, and there was a little bit more of like a plot element to it. But just being in her head made me so angry. That's honestly what this book did. I did not like the character at all, and I really struggled with it, but I wanted to finish it. I think I was on a blog tour for this one, but I really did not like this book, and I don't know if I'm going to read anything else by Bethany C. Morrow in the future. If I had to pick, I would say Song Below Water was my favorite, but definitely not like my all-time favorite book. I liked it. I liked the world building, but the main character in this one definitely was not a main character for me, unfortunately, and that is why it is on this list. Historical romance, and I've had really good luck picking up historical romances, and I have liked this author in the past, but Secrets of a Summer Night just did not work for me. It's also the week that I read like physically read four historicals in a row, and I think that was just a lot. This book was very, very long, and I just did not care midway through. Peace Love Books always says that like once a book hits its happily ever after component, she doesn't care anymore. And I always like, oh, I disagree. Like, I really like when you see the happily ever after. This book was the exception. Like, I did not care about once the characters were together. There was this whole drama point at the very, very end that like made no sense and was really, really hard to follow. So I didn't love it. And I love Wallflowers. I thought I didn't really like the male lead. The romance wasn't my favorite. he was like the annoying guy in the story, and I have very specific types of romance heroes, I mean Regency romance heroes that I like, and I've read a lot of them. You'll see them in my favorite video because I've enjoyed quite a few this year. Probably like 3 or 4 that I really, really loved. If you guys are interested in seeing my top favorite historicals, because I've read a couple, very, very much a new YouTuber in regards to that, let me know and I'll try to do it in early 2022. But just did not like this book. Really struggled. I think if I'm gonna read any more of these, I'm probably gonna pick them up on audio because I can increase the speed a little bit, which is how I've been really enjoying my historicals lately. So just did not work for me. Really, really long, and I did not care about the end of the story, like, at all. That plot was that plot they added, that was the random one, I just was not a fan of. So sorry, friends. Which is really sad because I really like most of her historicals, is Sophie Jordan, Reign of Shadows. Here is a photo. For the novice reading challenge and hosted by Book Roast. Ooh, that's coming back in 2022. I'm excited for that. And this book I had to read because it was like set outside. And you basically, it's kind of like a Sleeping Beauty retelling. And you find this girl and she's kind of held up in this tower. And then something happens to her tower and she has to sort of go on a run to save the day. I honestly did not care. Could not tell you what the plot of the story was. The characters were really like not as exciting. Just didn't capture me. It was a really, really slow read. And it was only like barely 300 pages, and it took me like a week to read it before I switched to the audio. Yeah, it was just too slow for me, and I did not care about anything involved. So that is why it is on this list. Doubt I'm going to finish the series, but I will check out more of Sophie Jordan's historicals because I have really liked those in the past. The next book that I really struggled with, and this was another book that I was really excited for, was an e-arc that I got from NetGalley, and that is Lake Edge. Here's the photo. It's also the Owl Crate book for September, which I didn't get in the box, but I read it, and I just really struggled with it. Me a little bit of Keeper of the Night by Kylie Baker that I really did like, but again, it was a book that just didn't wow me. Basically followed this girl, and her brother has magic, but everyone is very, very, like, in this town, they don't want magic. So when they are taken to live in this, like, lake house on the lake with this gentleman who has magic, things sort of go wrong. Its writing style was really, really hard for me to get into, and also it was very, very paranormal romancy, and I don't always love paranormal romances. It's just not something that I love, just because I tend to hate the leads in those books because they're really aggressive, and it comes across as, like, very, very, like, such just like abusive to me. Those relationships have always come across that way. So I sort of went in thinking I wasn't gonna love it, but I really didn't like it. The only highlight of the story was the relationship between the girl and her brother. Everything else I could sort of leave, but it was okay. It's on this list. I don't think I'll be reading more in this series, at least not right now. The book I'm going to talk about in this video is Nick and Noelle's Christmas Playlist. This is a recent Christmas read that I read that I really disliked. In my like wrap up, I just did not like either of the characters in this story. I felt like it was very, very juvenile. The writing style was really not my favorite, and like it was really catty. It really just wasn't my favorite. Like, I didn't feel connected to the characters. I felt like the plot was boring. It was like 100 pages longer than it needed to be. Very, very slow, and I really just didn't like the characters. So that is why it's on this list. If you loved any of these books, congratulations. I'm happy they were your favorites. These books did not work for me. And then the next 2 days, you guys are going to get into my favorites of the year, which are always my favorite videos to film. So thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what are some books that did not work for you in 2021, and I will talk to you for my next BookMas video. Bye, friends.